do a good job, you have to get one who's good. That's all.
Yes. No, because I'm the nicer student, and I'm the cheerleader.
You have to take
I
the
know
chair.
that. Well, no, because because here's the deal. We come to this, we see it tonight, and next time we go down. So someone.
Congratulations.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No, it's just we all speak at different levels. Okay. All right, welcome everybody. My first order of business isn't on anybody's agenda. My first order of business is public humiliation. There's a lady in the audience whose birthday is tonight. We can just sing a little round of happy birthday to Miss Ann Mead. Got it? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ann. Happy birthday to you. That's our number guy. Okay. Thank you. And seriously, happy birthday. That's just saved me having to call you on the phone and sing it into the phone. Okay. The second bit of business, it usually comes at the end of the meeting, but because I know there are a tremendous number of people that stayed from the policy committee to hear some of the reports, I was asked if we could perhaps have Kathy is our chairperson of our policy committee. For those that don't know, she'd give a report of what just happened in the meeting about the AAS. Go ahead. I'm moving that to now.
Moving that to now.
Moving that to right now
So that the people can don't have to wait.
Oh, you don't want to spend the whole night with us?
Well,
Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming and attending, everyone, including the board members that came. It's a very emotional issue, I know. But what came out of it was that the lottery of January 2016, there will be no sibling preference for the Danbury students only. and we will grandfather in all siblings until the 2016-2017 school year. And the new clause must be submitted into the current application to the state. And that was our consensus. Of course, it has many caveats to this, whether or not it will be accepted by the state, whether or not Mr. Mooney, who is our board lawyer, will give us the blessing. So there's many caveats to it, but right now that is the consensus of the committee, and we'll bring forth to the full board for more conversation. Thank you.
Alrighty, and thank you again for everybody for coming. And you don't really have to stay for the whole meeting. I understand. I won't be mad. Because if I could leave, it would be. I'm talking to everybody. Speak into the microphone. Was that the clue?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody speak into the microphone tonight. Thank you. All right. Kathy, would you like to start with a roll call?
Yes, that's a roll call. Right this second.
Or walk
Albert?
around? Yeah, I'm here.
Cooper.
Here.
Ferguson. Here. Latin.
Here.
Pauly.
Here.
Janelli.
Here.
Matrina.
Here.
Petrofessa.
Present.
Tabersack.
Here.
Franzilla. Here. Gang's all here.
We have no recognitions? No recognition.
It's her birthday.
Wait, I did birthday.
Oh, you did it the wrong time then. No,
You
I
weren't
have not.
here?
No, I
Oh,
was
do you want to sing? Go.
far away.
By the door and I'll help you out. There you go. All righty, public participation. All right. Has everybody, anyone that wanted to speak during public participation, have you signed up already? Okay. All righty. The board welcomes public participation and asks that speakers please limit their comments to 3 minutes. Speakers may offer objective comments of school board operations and programs that concern them. The board will not permit any expression of personal complaints or defamatory comments about Board of Education personnel and students, nor against any person connected with the Danbury Public School System. Having said that, is there anyone in the first row that would like to speak? All right. Oh, so sorry. Okay, got it. No, that's all right. May I, Louise Lamana from Benson Drive. Would you like to come up and speak, please, Louise? I know. Richard, would you make sure her microphone's on, please? Oh, you did, okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I just would like to say I've worked for Head Start since 1996, and the children that I have over the years come with little to no English, no social collateral, difficulty following directions, and problem solving. Besides not speaking and understanding English, when they leave me after 2 years, they are speaking English, understanding English. They are ready academically, which can be proved through my checkpoints. If anyone's interested, I'll print them out for you. They know their colors, shapes, their fine and gross motor has caught up to their developmental level. And a majority have no difficulty problem solving, which will support the kindergarten teacher when they get there. They learn how to work cooperatively with peers, and above all, they're able to follow a direction. They're self-sufficient, and they're toilet trained, and sometimes they're not when we get them. This does not cover the discipline problems we handle, that we support both the families and the children and make it an easy transition for them when they get into kindergarten. My families over the years have been involved in their child's education. I have a 98 to 100% participation in 3 conferences a year and 2 home visits. My parents are comfortable coming into the school, discussing their child's education and showing an interest in their education. Over the years, several, if not most, of my parents who started out not speaking English have taken the time to learn English and become citizens of the United States and are now part of the Danbury tax base, which means their children They're contributing to their children's education. I don't know what would happen to these children and families if Head Start was not available to them to move them forward. 40-year, you've never done without Head Start because it's a 40-year partnership, and it might be a rude awakening not to have it. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Monica Martins.
Good evening, members of the board, my colleagues. My main goal today, why Head Start? Why fund a program like this? Because you need a strong community. We need to continue work that so not only develop children in the basic skills that we all see as a goal as educators and members of the community, but also that we build stronger families. We bring these families together. We show them the importance of being a parent, the importance of having a stronger education that becomes on the basics. And it's not only things like that. We provide these families, and especially these children that are with us throughout the year, basic things that we take for granted. But us, my colleagues and myself, as educators, and we visit their house, and we are part of their families, as they are part of our family, we bring to them. We bring to hope. We bring the American dream, the real American dream, of having an education, of being a person of society, of being a true citizen. And that's what Head Start is about. Positive points. We're going to have more English speakers. We are going to have citizens conscious of their duties. We have parent involvement that's going to go throughout middle and high school. Critical ages and critical areas that we have in our city. As a resident of Danbury for the past 10 years. We are preparing children that can enter kindergarten with their heads above their shoulders, that can really learn, that can go the step above nationwide like they do in our program. We are part of the class, the CLASS, and we all scored above average. We are having a program that attends 95% of the Danbury population. So that said, I would ask you humbly to please keep supporting our program. Because overall, we have an ambience, and I invite any of you to come to our school if you have the time and the interest, and see with your own eyes what happens, the magical of learning that happens in Head Start every single day, every single moment. And all of that in a very positive environment that only brings the best of the best. Thank you so much for your time, and I may hear from you later. Thanks so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Monica?
Two of us tonight, huh? Two Monica?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I'm passing a letter around. There have been some questions that have been raised of Head Start, so we just thought that we would detail some of them that have come to us in this letter to Dr. Sal and the board. First off, thank you for your continued support of Head Start. It is a common misunderstanding that it's just a federal program. Head Start is designed to be a federal, state, and a local program, and that's what we run here in Danbury. And because of that, we have been so effective at helping to close Danbury's achievement gap, which we clearly can demonstrate for you. As my colleague already said, there's another common misconception that we don't serve Danbury's children. All of our classrooms are located in Danbury. We serve 95% of our children from Danbury. Currently, of the 307 students in our program, 293 of them are Danbury residents. 161 of those kids are going to kindergarten next year in your schools. There's been questions about what other boards of education support Head Start programs, and in many ways, either directly or indirectly, most boards of ed do. Very specific examples are New Haven, Waterbury, Naugatuck, East Hartford, Manchester, and Enfield. Some boards of education run the programs themselves and put tremendous support into it. And I don't need to really detail, because I think we've talked to the board a lot about the performance of our Head Start program. For 2 cycles now in a row, we have scored 100% on our federal reviews, both in the performance standards, which there are over 1,900 in areas of education, health and safety, language development, but also, as Monica mentioned in the class, scoring system, which is developed by the Vanderbilt University. We've scored well above the national averages in each area of domain, which doesn't happen in all programs. There are several programs in Connecticut that have had to recompete for their grant due to scoring below the national average, and we are not one of them. And that is because of the support in the community for the program. It couldn't be done alone without that support. This year alone, and again, you've been invited to come see our programs, and we will give you as much information as you want, but this year alone, in September, only 28% of the children who came to us were at age level. And in the midwinter, so in February, that was already at 75%. We still have 1 or 2 checkpoints to go with these kids, but you could see clearly how we're making up the gap that these children come to us with. And again, about 75% of our children historically come to Head Start with English not as their first language. So not only, as everyone has said, we're teaching them English, we're teaching them to sit in a circle, we're teaching them to read, to write. My 3-year-old can count to 60. And those are things that they wouldn't be able, they would go to kindergarten without those very basic skills, without a Head Start. So again, you know, it's due to this partnership that we are able to have the results that we do, and we thank you for your continued support, and I'm here if you have any questions. Thanks.
Very much. Kathy Snow.
Hello. I just want to mention 2 different things, and one is just going back to the AIS sibling policy. Thank you for letting me speak freely at that meeting. I really do appreciate it. But I just have to say, just one more time, I know that the choice of parents to apply to that school are, the fairness has come up. But when you fill out that application and you know that siblings are given preference, that's a choice you make as well. So if you don't want, you know, this, you don't have to choose to fill out that application, but if you do fill it out, you know that that's the chance you're taking. That's the point of the lottery. And by not providing that to Danbury residents, but yet providing it to other residents from the participating towns, it seems even more unfair to be living in Danbury. So enough on that. That's my point on that. And then I just want to make sure all the Board of Education knows, as a proud parent of a student at Rogers Park that competed in Odyssey of the Mind in Michigan, there were 2 teams from Danbury that went, one from AIS and one from Rogers Park. They won the state championships in March at Southern State, and then went on and competed against teams from literally around the world at Michigan State University just this past weekend, and both teams did fantastic. It was just a life memory that I'm sure you're all aware. I just had to make sure. So it's just great for our city. So thank you.
Sophia.
Okay.
You can do it.
My name is Sophia, and I was a Head Start child. I learned a lot. It was a great experience to go to preschool. I'm still best friends with Marcela Ramos, my friend from my first year at Head Start. My mom was a volunteer and now she works there. I will be very sad if other kids can't have this opportunity. Please help. We are the future. As I succeed in my school now, Moore Street, I think of all the children that may not because they didn't go to Head Start. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's not fair. That was beautiful.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak that didn't write down? Sign up. Not write down. Sign up. No? Sure? Okay. Seeing none. We're going to go with the consent calendar, Kathy.
That the Board of Education approves the items on the consent calendar, exhibits 15-97 through 15-101 as recommended.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll try your minds. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? It all passes. Is there an employee representative here to speak? No. Student representatives? I don't see any. Seniors are pretty busy right now. Alrighty. Moving right along, we're on to our presentation. It's the Next Generation Science Standards. Dr. Rosvalli, would you like to start your presentation? Don't turn it on until I leave.
As the board may know, with the ever-evolving iterative process of content standards, raising rigor in the United States, etc., the federal government and the state government and local boards of ed have been looking at different kinds of standards that will prepare our students to be college and or career ready. So tonight, Dr. Rosvalli is going to walk us through the next generation of proposed science standards in Connecticut. There's an analog to this. Kara Casimiro, our humanities coordinator, is also working on the next generation of social studies standards. As we develop new curricula, these will serve as the basis for our curriculum development efforts and our associated professional development, as well as our related job performance embedded assessments.
Great, thank you very much. I have culled the original slideshow from the State Board of Education from about 60 slides to about a third of that. I will be fairly quick in going through this because part of what I'm really looking for tonight is a conversation with the Board of Ed. And the recommendation is that we have an opportunity to have you answer some questions, have me take some notes, and provide some feedback back to the State Board of Education. This is actually very unusual in terms of a curriculum adoption by the state. Typically, they adopt a curriculum, they send it out, and the districts moan and groan, and they say, oh, really? Did you have to do that? This is an opportunity, before they adopt it, for us to give some input. We've actually had a lot of opportunity for feedback and a lot of opportunity for input in terms of the science district leaders and the science leaders around the state all along. The Next Generation Science Standards were adopted in April of 2013. Prior to that, the K-12 framework came out, And it was an ongoing iterative process where we were given opportunities to comment on 3 draft versions along the way. At that time, I was very active with the Connecticut Science Supervisors Association. I was president of the organization, and we led several professional development workshops where we introduced our members to the next generation science standards as they had been released to that stage. And we looked at them, looked at the way that they're constructed, and looked at the way that they were going to inform instruction and change the way that we teach science in the state. And we had opportunities to comment on the content and also the way that the frameworks are put together and the way the standards are put together. So the State Board of Ed, as you can see on the slide, is really looking for some two-way communication. They are looking to provide some information. They are also looking for feedback. So the short-term goal is that there is an extensive public outreach campaign going on presently, months of May through July, and the State Board of Ed is looking for input before they make their ultimate decision. So here you can see part of the plan over these several months. We are in the month of May right now, and presentations and feedback survey is being facilitated by district leaders, district science leaders such as myself. It's being done across the state. You can see in June that they have several plans for introducing this to principals and to families. There's actually a brunch and learn at Mystic Aquarium on June 17th and another one on June 19th. I know the print is a little bit small up there, but there are some opportunities for families to learn about that. There is also something called a Leadership Development Academy, and 85 people across the state applied for that, including 3 from Danbury. I was selected, and Beth Manning, who teaches 7th grade science in the STEM Academy at Westside Middle School Academy, she was also selected. So we will be 2 of the 20 leaders that will be facilitating these sorts of workshops and information sessions around the state over the next 3 years. So the goals of science education in terms of the framework is to educate all students in science and engineering. The vision is very clear that the science teaching is going to be for all children. We're looking to provide foundational knowledge for those who will become the scientists, but we're also looking to educate all. So what you can see on the next slide is all the standards are expected of all students. This approach is much more than just a way to refute the common notion that learning physics is only for students in advanced math. That's sort of the physics snob approach that we've seen in the past. Or that taking earth and space science is only for students who are not on the college track, and that would include, for example, just a geology elective or an astronomy elective or something like that, such that if you had the opinion that somebody really couldn't withstand the rigor of a full chemistry course or a physics course, they should take these elective courses. Nonsense. All students need to know some earth and space science. It has been part of the CAPT, thankfully, and it has been something that we have included for a number of years. So this is all science for all students. So we are looking at a stronger alignment with the Connecticut Core Standards, aka Common Core. The Connecticut Core Standards in Mathematics and Language Arts, they find themselves on each and every page in the Next Generation Science Standards. It provides a link, and it talks about which language arts standards are at that grade level, at that point of the year, likewise for math. And we are also looking at 21st century career readiness skills. We really want to see the problem solving, the analytical thinking, communicating, all of the things that the board has very wisely put into their coherence plan, and all of the things that we put into our curricula and the binders that are up on the left-hand side. We've been looking at these 21st century learning skills for a number of years now, 5-6 years or more, and this is exactly what is in the upgraded science standards that really was not found so much in the former Connecticut Science Framework. So we are looking at, if you look at the third bullet, science observation, argumentation, and discourse developing language skills. That argumentation, arguing with evidence, again, straight from the Board of Ed's coherence plan, looking at arguments using evidence. We also have some internationally benchmarked standards, so obviously we would like to keep the Connecticut students competitive on a global basis. Many of today's jobs require STEM knowledge. Many STEM jobs pay well, and they don't, in fact, require advanced degrees. I'm sure that you're going to be hearing more about the DECO program soon, the Danbury Early College Opportunity. We're looking into a partnership with Naugatuck Valley Community College, where students will be earning an associate's degree. And I'm going to show you a few slides where an associate's degree will suit you quite well. I mentioned that this is intertwining the math and the ELA skills. So in the very center of this triple Venn diagram, you can see several of the English skills, several of the math skills, and the science skills that are in common to all three of these. So we are connected to the Common Core, very aware of the connections, and looking to educate the whole student and not just use the silo approach that we've used in the past, where they go to their English class, drop everything, forget everything, walk down the hall, and now you're in science land or math land or elsewhere. So here are some STEM jobs requiring an associate's degree, and it might be a little bit tricky to read at first because if you're looking across, we're actually looking at the growth in jobs. So the one that sticks out the farthest is diagnostic sonographers. That is expected to grow by about 35% during the next 7 years, which is phenomenal. And it pays not too badly as well. You can see that that has a salary of $78,000 or so. That is with an associate's degree. You can see dental hygienist. It's not growing quite as fast, but again, with an associate's degree and pay of $81,000. So there are a lot of STEM jobs that really we need to educate our students so that they will be available to fill those jobs. Here's a few more. Electrical powerhouse repairers, registered nurses, environmental engineering technicians, geological technicians, cardiovascular technologists, environmental science technicians, and chemical technicians. So the State Department of Ed cites the Connecticut Department of Labor, fastest growing occupations in Connecticut. STEM really opens doors. It means jobs. So for all occupations, there is a 3.6 to 1 ratio of unemployed people per job posting. In the STEM occupations, that drops in half. It's 1.9 to 1. For STEM occupations in healthcare, the job postings outnumber the unemployed by 3.2 to 1. So there are 3.2 open jobs in healthcare for every one person who's looking for it. There's a dearth. We need to fill this. We need to prepare our students so that they can take these jobs that are sitting there waiting for them and they pay well. So Connecticut's role in the next generation science standards. As I mentioned, there have been drafts. The State Department of Education science consultants reviewed 2 drafts and they gave feedback to Achieve. Achieve is the national organization that shepherded the genesis of the next generation science standards and worked on the publication thereof. Next generation science standards are available as a free download, or you can buy the published book for $30-something, but everything is really available online, including some very helpful appendices. 24 Connecticut science educators took part in state-led reviews of the 2 public drafts, generating feedback to Achieve. And that's not even to talk about the ones that I mentioned that the Connecticut Science Supervisors Association led. 3,700 Connecticut residents looked at the public drafts in May of 2012 and January of 2013 before, again, it was finalized in April of 2013. So at this point, the next generation science standards have been finalized for 2 years. So what's different in the next generation? There are 3 dimensions of science that are woven together. That is the cross-cutting concepts, the science and engineering practices, and the disciplinary core ideas. In addition to that, and you can see the tri-braid of the rope, obviously that makes the rope a lot stronger. So those are the things that I just mentioned, the science and engineering practices, the cross-cutting concepts, the disciplinary core ideas. In addition, there is engineering design that is being included at the K-12 level, never before done. That did not exist with the Connecticut Science Frameworks, that did not exist with any previous version. Now we think that every student needs to know something about engineering. Well, for a number of years now, we've been doing the Connecticut Invention Convention quite successfully, And we find that our students at the kindergarten, first, second grade level on up are very capable as little engineers. So they can address problems. We just need to present them with these sorts of opportunities. So in terms of the distinctions between the next generation and the previous, there is more emphasis on students developing the explanations using evidence and investigating explanations of real-world phenomena and reading various informational news articles, magazines, journals, web-based resources, etc., that sort of text, as opposed to textbooks. Before, the students followed instructions and before they were repeating the explanations that were given by the teacher, but now they are developing the explanations. Here we can see the 8 science and engineering practices. Notice that 4 of them have some writing that is in red. Those are the ones that are separate and distinct from the sort of science and inquiry skills that we were leading before. Defining problems was not done before, is part of the next gen science. Developing and using models is something that is really quite different. At first I thought, oh, models? Sure, we do a model of the cell, we do a model of the solar system. No, not that kind of model. I'll speak more to that at another time, but we are using something called the Next Generation Science Exemplars that is still in development, and we are learning more. We as a crew of science teachers, we are learning more about developing and using models, and developing a model that a student commits something to thought and then is confronted with some scenario or additional knowledge and realizes that they need to adapt and change their model. So that's really, that's a sea change. Designing solutions, again, dealing with the engineering aspect and engaging in argument from evidence, again, that is part of the district's coherence plan. So in terms of assessment, what they used to do was one dimension at a time, describe the effects of the strengths of pushes and pulls on the motion. Well, now what we want them to do is plan and conduct an investigation that provides evidence of the efforts of balanced and unbalanced forces. You can see quite a difference in the sophistication of that. There's 2 more examples on the screen. The board members have them in front of them, and I'm just going to move forward so that I can hear from you and you can stop hearing from me. Proposed transition to the next generation science state assessments. That is, we are going to replace CAPT and CMT first in 2019. So you've heard all along that CAPT and CMT science will be with us at least through 2016. I now declare that it will be with us through 2018. So we are going to continue to use CAPT and CMT science for another 3 years, and then, and what's nice about that is that that does enable us to transition. We don't have to completely change our teaching overnight. We don't have to change our content overnight. We will work a couple grade levels at a time, and we will be prepared by 2019 for the first administration of new assessments. I wish I could talk more to those assessments. They're not yet built. So they're working on them. So here was something that I thought was sort of interesting. Design a school butterfly garden. We want the students to conduct tests for soil nutrients and water retention, record the hours of sunlight and average wind speed, measure and mark a square foot grid to calculate the perimeter and area of the garden, research the butterfly life cycle, etc. So you can see that they've laid down a grid with string and sticks, and for the first time they can really visualize a square foot. Now it makes more sense to them. If Bernardo de Castro were here right now, he would say, how come you took pictures from the state? You've got a lot of pictures at Rogers Park to take. The gardens over there are lovely, and we're doing a wonderful job in our science department of using the outdoors. But again, here, we're just looking at integrating the science, the math, the engineering, integrating all of that for real-world problems. Here's another real-world context for learning science. The picture on the left is a somewhat familiar phenomenon. We have a ski jumper who is at the moment upside down. So the question is, how is this skier able to fly through the air upside down? What forces are interacting? Will she land on her head? So these have given the student, just by looking at the picture, a number of questions that they are raising, that they are interested in, engaging in, and it's leading right to what we want them to learn about anyway. They're going to learn all about forces, but it's because they want to, not because we're making them. Little recommendation from the State Department of Education. Don't buy anything that says that it's NGSS aligned. yet. Please learn about the vision of science teaching, the vision of science learning as described in the framework, and build district capacity through ongoing professional learning. I mentioned that Beth Manning and I will be working on the Leadership Development Academy, and we will be presenting here in Danbury, but we'll also be presenting around the state. So we are going to take our time. We're going to work on that 3-year implementation process, and we're going to really figure out, scrutinize whether the vendors out there have something that is truly aligned to the next generation, or whether they're simply trying to repackage things. In a lot of our other areas, we've built our own, and oftentimes that just works best. Good old Yankee ingenuity. So, transitioning. As of 2014, professional development is started to be offered through university faculty, in-service teachers, and administrators. Presently, there are 5 Danbury teachers and myself who are taking part in a math-science partnership grant through Sacred Heart University. We are learning to address science differently already. In 2015, you can see that they're going to start to pilot some items in the state, and that we are working on professional development for pre-service university faculty, for in-service teachers, and for administrators. And then we are hoping for a phase-in of the curriculum to take place over the next 3 years, with the first administration of the state assessments in 2019. So the district's to-do list. Invest in high-quality PD. Again, we're going to be capable of quite a bit of that in-house. Enroll the district teams to collaborate in curriculum development institutes. There is one on life science that's taking place at the Connecticut Science Center at the end of June. And in the next few years, adapt and or acquire instructional material that truly is next generation aligned, and expect and look for transformed teaching practices, which are critical for the student success. Okay, I have a few questions for you. This is really hard to read from back here. I have it on my screen. So first are going to be a couple of agree-disagree statements. Participants in my group understand the changes to teaching and learning which are associated with the next generation science standards. Strongly disagree, disagree, agree, or strongly agree?
What do you want them to do, Harry?
I'd like a response.
You want them to get a consensus or do a
Sure.
rating?
Consensus is good.
You mean right along, right here, right after this, right now?
Right here, right now.
Question?
Okay, repeat the question.
Yeah, how about making it bigger?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't see.
I can't see with my glasses.
We'll work on it.
Is that scientifically possible?
Participant in
There
my
it is.
group.
We are
Okay.
the group.
We're the group.
You are the group. The Board of Ed members are the group. So participants understand the changes to teaching and learning which are associated with next generation science standards.
Does anybody understand it yet?
I disagree.
You're asking us if we understand what's necessary to be done.
I strongly agree.
Okay. So I actually was already told what your answer might be to the first one.
Can we phone a friend?
I was told that you might disagree with the first one because you might not feel like you knew what the changes to teaching and learning are yet. And that is perfectly fine as an answer.
Question though, I mean.
Go ahead.
It's the general approach.
It is?
Okay, so it's solving problems,
Yes?
okay, and communicating the solutions. You know, I think we personally understand the general items behind this.
Okay.
Specifics, in fact, I was going to ask you, where do we stand in our curriculum right now? Right now with district, well, that's where the more specifics come in. But I think we generally understand the difference between what's memorization and textbook approach and what project orientation is and what's required. I'm wondering personally, how do you test these things on math tests?
Yeah, that will be interesting.
I understand. I can see in the classroom you do something, project-oriented series of lessons, but now you're testing, how you put this on the computer and so forth and test it. It would seem to be hands-on. Put it this way, there's nothing better than the classroom, okay?
Of course.
Okay, and is this going to, by the way, add to more testing? I would just throw that out.
Well, it will replace the CMT and the CAPT. Yes.
My suggestion would be to Riley and then to you,
This is really forward-thinking and complex.
Yep.
And I think it would be beneficial for us if we did this in a workshop so that we could understand it better, have more time for you to explain to us. We can profess our ignorance, and then we can answer the questions a whole lot better and give us a longer period of time to understand it. Because it's really good forward-thinking stuff, and there's a lot of other questions that go with it. I like your comment in terms of the very beginning, saying that it won't be the traditional math class, science class, and then English, because I think without the English and without English or writing or even common sense, you're going to be producing people who don't know how to read and write. So that's important to tie that all in.
Right.
I'd like to understand how that curriculum change can be done. So I think it would be a really fruitful workshop for us to have, and we can get more into that. That's the key word.
I'm just going to ask the question before I yes. Does everybody agree with what you just said?
Which was?
I don't want to presume that everybody wants a workshop. I mean, I would like to better understand. Ann Rose.
Oh, I don't mind a workshop, but I would strongly agree, because this is tying into the Common Core standards.
It is.
Okay. Which I'm very aware of, so, okay. But I don't mind having a workshop.
Gladys.
I support a workshop.
Okay. Ralph, I'm sorry.
I don't mind a workshop.
I don't mind a workshop, okay.
It's a resounding endorsement.
Yes, thank you. Richard. Hawley.
Yes, the workshop is fine.
Good.
Yeah, when appropriate.
Yes, David.
Sure.
Are you going to have enough time to get your answers back to them if we have a workshop?
Well, let me skip down past question number 6.
Yeah, okay.
And let's see if we can possibly address a few things real quickly.
Sure, go ahead.
What are things that you like best about NGSS as you've heard them in a 15-minute period?
Well, that's to Richard's point, as far as the commingling of all the core.
Okay.
You know, the math, science, and English.
Right.
And it being prescriptive too, I like that, you know, you find out the answers. But my concern is about professional development. We only have 5 teachers that actually know anything about the new generation. So my concern would be about professional development. How can we
How are we going to get that done?
Support that.
Yeah. How are we going to get that done?
Yeah, how are we going to support?
Financially as well.
Because that's, to me, that's the key, is having qualified people teaching this curriculum.
Ann Rose?
So what I think I'm probably even most concerned about is logistics. Like, how are you going to get this done? And are you thinking K-12? Like, how is it going to change what we already do and how we already do things? And what does that mean for the structure of our schools as we see it today? Because this kind of thinking and putting this type of approach into place is going to require some overhaul, which I'm not saying is good or bad. I'm just saying it's going to require a lot of work and a lot of overhaul in what we currently are doing today and how we're doing it, how we're actually doing it.
Great.
All right, I agree with the board, but I think somewhere we need to talk about what are the preparatory schools doing in teacher prep to prepare those teachers coming out with some background knowledge here. Just trying to do it on one end here would be virtually impossible.
They're not.
So I mean, that needs to be talked about.
I was just wondering, I think those of us who went through education programs realize quite often the people who they're doing it were not really in the classroom with what was going on at the moment. And I think what Dr. Sal said is really, I think that has to be one of the cores, that at least the people coming out of the colleges to teach are well versed in these programs, so at least that you're not continuously needing professional development to teach them. But secondly, people like you going to these conferences, I assume if you're going to be doing a lot of professional development, or, right, this is one way.
Indeed.
So, as a board,
Mhm.
we're always looking for something, right? But it might be a good investment to try to have people go to and enter these programs in the summer and all, then use this for professional development, sort of like the tile, and so forth. Because the teachers who are in the classroom now, who are brought up like I was, we have all these, math specialists. We need these people because they were not trained in the methods, and they've been using the same methods, all these years. But so as a board, we have to think of how we're going to, how we're going to finance this, but how to use the people we want who are interested to go to these programs, and then use them for professional development. We have great resources in our system. I think if we just probe in science.
Okay, Bob, everybody stop. Gladys, you had something to say.
Just something really quick. I was excited about hearing, along with everything else that's listed up here, what type of avenue are you going to use to make sure we use the word all standards for all children, and that's going to be a tassel.
Okay. Dr. Rosvelli, what do you need from us, apparently?
That is all that I need. I don't need to take up any more of your time tonight. I am very much looking forward to... No. I'm very much looking forward to the invitation back.
Harry, 1 second, because the board's going to grapple on this. There's been a conversation of migrating away from the traditional text, using them as a resource in the room. And, at some point, when you look at these cost factors, I'm thinking that, we need to be thinking about transferring funds from there, get kits and other things, that hands-on things for teachers and literature, is that we need to have that conversation.
Agreed.
This is a primary area for us to have that conversation.
Yes, as well as access to technology.
Right.
Yeah. Students
So
bringing their own devices.
It might not be new money, but could be reallocating.
Okay. Richard?
And also, part and parcel with this, we have to start thinking and critically thinking every time we come up with a great idea like this. And I really mean it's a great idea. I don't mean it's decision. Is that we have to figure out what an estimated financial cost on this is, because we can't keep jumping on the bandwagon, saying it's great, yes, I'm going to do it, and then find out when it's implementing we don't have funds to do it. So it's a budgeting process. And I don't know if it's possible, but there should be some financial consideration to this, in addition to what Dr. Sal said about a change of thinking in terms of methodology and what you use as the curriculum. So we've got to focus again more on, not more, but equally on the financial aspects of these things as to what's down the road. I look at it that we're like maxing out our credit card at this point and paying huge interest rates and hoping the next day doesn't come. But it's important. I think it's a valuable concept, and I'd like to know more about it.
Great.
Anybody else have anything for Harry?
Thank you, Harry.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get back to you with a date.
I'm excited. Yeah, it would be nice. Thank you very much. Very excited. I did. I unplugged it. But I'll unplug it.
No.
I unplugged it because mine was.
Where's Kathy? Kath?
And it's more important.
Kathy, we're moving into the action items.
That the Board of Education accept the April 2015 operating results analysis of the general fund in accordance with 15-102.
Second.
Seconded by Gladys. Any questions?
Yes.
Richard?
Joe.
Oh,
Joe,
I'm
where
sorry,
do you
Paul.
stand? Give us the long and short of it, please.
Long and short is, as you see, I did make a projection on health insurance claims.
Yep.
Trend is in line to close, I would call it. As I did say, we did have a really ugly July with 2.7 million claims. We're monitoring them weekly because, again, depending on doctor's visits, the draws hit. We did see actually a pretty high draw this week. All in all, looks pretty good on health. Again, maybe 300,000 or so, 400,000 to the plus. There's still some challenge in special ed. There is some relief on the salary lines because a lot of that's going to hit the substitute line. All in all, we should close to the positive this year. I'm not concerned about where we'll close, but we're still monitoring special ed costs ongoing. But I mean, it's all pretty much settled in now. Feeling comfortable where we are.
Thanks.
Richard?
He answered my question.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yes, I just had a question on the workman's compensation. Just a comment, workers' compensation continues to run over budget, which is contributing, to the overall problem. We continue to see no end. That's the other thing I just want to look at. What's the problem there that,
I mean, in a sense, and Kim will chime in or two, every event is a compensable event, and we continue to see high claim. We have a very high deductible at $500,000 per occurrence per employee. So those claims continue to move. So we have some claims that are ongoing, 2-3 year claims that are outstanding. We are doing some return to work. I've had Kerma down here 3 times. We're now going through some of our higher claims schools to actually meet with the staff. We've seen some injuries that, people, trips and falls. And we've seen some issues with paras, but I mean, you see in the operating budget next year is $150,000 increase. So no end in sight to where the claims are. It's not a case that they're going to make any meaningful fall. So.
I remember Rich Jaber said they were doing safety classes.
We are.
We're doing, trying to solve this. How's that coming along?
Actually, your custodial group is actually becoming some of the lower claims. Your teachers are seeing much higher claim rates amongst those groups. So, and that's why we're trying to get into some of those staff meetings with Kerma to explain that new teacher orientation, those sorts of things. But like I said, at a $500,000 exposure, I mean, you're basically self-insured for workers' comp for all intents and purposes. So.
Okay, I'm sorry. Richard.
Joe, are you allowed to say what type of claim? I mean, it's hard for me to understand in a non-manufacturing or physical type environment, what type of claims create such a volume of workers' comp claims? I look at it as a white collar.
Yeah.
Per se,
Awesome question. I just am getting an analysis from Kerma. I could certainly put on the next agenda. Particularly slip, trip, and falls we're seeing is fairly common amongst teachers. We do see some related to footwear in schools, whether sometimes flip-flops are worn, those sorts of things. We do see those items.
Some big ones with injuries with students, too. I mean, that there are incidents that involve students that are resulting in injuries. And, you can't predict which ones are going to be dramatic and which ones aren't.
But
we've had a couple of those.
Slips and falls and it's due to tile floors or something, then maybe it might be worth an investment to do something, put down runners or rubber things on the bottom of the shoes.
Custodians, we have the rubberized boots and stuff when they do floor accident. But actually, we just got a report from Kerma that, and it's not detailed. It's very high level. It's a very easy public document. It shows just breakdowns on the types of claims.
It'd be interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, we did have a lengthy meeting with Kerma. So.
Has the city considered looking at Lords of London something else for insurance?
No,
premium costs.
The premium costs would be very high because we do have a fairly high claim group, and we are, in a sense, all municipal agencies are insured with Kerma. That's kind of, in a sense, the Connecticut State Insurance Fund. So we all do sit there. Property liability is much more contained. We have $125,000 deductibles, so that you'll see those are a lot more in line. We don't typically have that many claims, but comp has been the last 2 years have been very high.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks.
Good. Oh, all in favor? Aye. Anybody objecting? Okay, good. Moving on, Kathy.
That the Board of Education accept the April 2015 operating results analysis from the grants and projects in accordance with 15-103.
Second.
Seconded by Ralph. Any questions? Discussions? Seeing none, I'll try your minds. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. C, Kath.
That the Board of Education accept the revised wellness policy 7-109 in accordance with 15-104.
Second.
Seconded by Bob. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. D, Kath.
That the Board of Education approve the school lunch price increase in accordance with 15-105.
Second.
Seconded by Gladys. All in, I'm sorry, any questions?
That's all I'm saying.
No? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
E.
That the Board of Education approve the inter-school agreements for the school lunch services at St. Gregory, St. Peter, Education Connection Pathways in accordance with 15-106.
Second.
Seconded by Ralph. Any questions?
Just a question. Joe, how many students is over at the Pathway Academy? You can give that information to me
I'll
later.
get back to you on that one, Gladys.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in what the number is there.
Yeah, sure,
Okay,
no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Kath, F.
That the Board of Education approve the Danbury High School trip to France, Morocco, Spain, April 15th through 24th, 2016, in accordance with 15-107.
Seconded by Michael Ferguson. Any questions? Discussion, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's done.
Have a good time.
Really have a really nice time.
Enjoy.
And if there are any openings, you know, you need someone to go.
Chaperoning opportunities. You need a chaperone.
T.
That the Board of Education approve the 2015-2016 submission of the state ECS grant in accordance with 15-108.
I would like to make a motion to table this motion.
If I could ask Madam Chair,
Yes?
would it be possible to either caucus or go into executive session regarding this matter?
Not now.
Why not?
No, seriously.
Motion to table can't be had, no discussion.
All right, before we do anything, there is a motion on the floor, okay, that we have to address. There's two motions. The first one, and then the second one was just seconded by Michael, is that correct? By Michael Ferguson. Did you get that, Flo? Okay. The second, the motion, Kathy made the motion. It was not, I seconded, no, it wasn't. I made a motion to table this motion until the next meeting. All righty?
So the point of order, please.
Please.
Right. So the point of order is there's a pending motion on the floor to table the vote.
Yes.
You have a question from one of your members whether
Yes.
or not he can move to go into executive session. You can withdraw your motion and vote on that, or you can pursue that motion and deal with his after.
Okay.
Those are your choices.
Okay.
Right?
Somebody
And move to
say-
recess.
Would it be possible to caucus
You
versus
can-
versus
You can recess this meeting. You can recess this meeting. During the recess, you can certainly go to a caucus, but you can move to recess this meeting.
Yeah, you can't caucus in the middle
You
of the
can't
meeting.
caucus in the.
You can't cause, that's, right.
Did somebody second your motion?
Okay, yeah, the motion was seconded
Okay,
by
so we
Michael
have a
Ferguson.
discussion on it or
Point
question?
of order, point on the table, is that correct? If that's,
The motion to table is on the,
and what is the
Motion.
required passages? I don't have the rule in front of me.
it's been seconded,
Right.
and now it needs a majority vote. to
Majority?
pass.
Okay, all in favor?
Can I have a question on it?
No question.
No? For discussion? No? Yes?
I don't know, can we do that?
I mean, we have a
We're trying
motion to
to-
table,
My understanding on a table is
It's
there's.
just about the table.
It's just about tabling.
Yeah, there's no discussions about the table, right? You have it
I
in
wish I
front.
knew what the reason was.
I don't know, I'm not Robert. I didn't
Okay.
invent it,
No,
but I'm
I-
asking
you know,
for the rules.
There's a motion to table on the floor.
I wish.
Can't hear you, I can't hear you.
Any member of the board can make a motion.
I understand that.
So there's a motion on the floor to table a vote.
Okay.
Yeah, but any member.
Can I ask a question on this or anything?
And now you have to vote.
She can withdraw the motion and recess.
The question is, after the second, Point of order. Can there be a discussion,
It's not
or is it just a
debatable.
vote?
It's not a debatable.
So it's a vote.
You can't ask a question on it.
It's not debatable.
Down vote.
It's a motion to table.
I wish I knew what
You can
You can withdraw and then go to
withdraw and
recess
go
if
to
that
recess
was,
if you want.
Well,
Yes, Michael.
clarification from Dr. Glass is that he has until June 24th, which is our final Board of
Okay,
Education
we're
meeting,
not-
to file for that. So there is time to table the issue.
Well, I knew that before I made the motion. All righty, I'm very, very sorry. And we can't have a discussion because we just said there was no discussion on it.
So
So
it's being tabled.
it's been made it and seconded. All in favor? Aye. May I see a show of hands?
To table it?
To table
To
it.
table it.
Okay. I have, it's unanimous vote, okay?
Point of order then, does it return at the next regular meeting or at a different time? Just so I follow.
It's the next,
It depends on what you put on the
It's your
agenda. It's your agenda.
So there's no requirement to put on the next
No.
agenda per se?
No, it's been tabled.
that's why I just tabled it. I didn't say, okay? Thank you.
So the audience knows that's what
we can't.
What?
tell the audience what we did. That's what they heard.
All right, you go ahead, Joey.
For the audience in there, that was where they were going to discuss the possibility of Head Start. So that's in what they call that grant. Being that they tabled it, that means they're not going to talk about it till after possibly the next meeting. But I would let Monica know at when they will discuss it. So that's what all happened up here. Okay? I just want to be clear.
All right. When we break. Okay. All righty. Sal, the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll have Kim, are you feeling okay to update him on the
Yep.
principal search?
Yep. At the last meeting, we talked about the search that we are about to undertake for a new high school principal. And I mentioned to you at that meeting that we have a consultant, Jackie Jacoby, who does a lot of work around the state herself in consulting. And we've retained her to come in for the limited purpose of doing some focus groups, which are going to run tomorrow at the high school. There's a slot for staff and faculty. There is a slot for administrators, right? There's a slot for administrators in the building, and there's a slot for the school governance council and PTO members to come. We wanted her to come and to speak with you at a different opportunity because we thought it would make sense for her to come in and debrief a little bit with you all individually. So we're going to run those focus groups tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have some great feedback from her at the end of the week that I can bring back to you at a later time. And then we will commence the process of going about looking for a replacement. We'll start to have the outlines of what it is we think that the team up there is looking for.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have any questions on that? All right. Anything else, Sal?
Not on the principal search. I have some other conversations, but
Go ahead.
it'll be in the executive session.
Oh, okay.
Personnel.
All righty. My report is, I don't have a report, actually.
No. We're on discussion.
Oh, you're on discussions?
A.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Bill, we're talking about, as you know, next year is the volunteer year for the calendar. There's a suggested regional calendar. There's 6 regions in the state. Each will have a different calendar, but they're similar within the region. There's some variances within the region because some districts, for example, go to school on Columbus Day, Veterans Day, Yom Kippur, some don't. So there's some time that we can make adjustments. So next year, we don't have to follow it. The following year, we're required to follow all of those rules and calendar requirements. But for the next year, as you know, we had we produced the calendar so parents can plan their time for next year, and we did that a while ago. The conversation now, seeing how the arbitration has passed and the board prevailed, that we can have dismissal time across the district, K-12, with that decision from the arbitrator. I recommend strongly, you heard what Harry was talking about. I do not know where I'm going to find the time or capable of paying anyone the time to do the kind of work that needs to be done substantively in the departments. Harry is a department chair, or department. When we meet on these Tuesdays, we've been able to dedicate department, and then we're able to dedicate them to the principal, and then we have grade level meetings. So we've been able to use that time productively. So we did a survey, because the board had asked, and we said we would do it on preferences regarding dismissals. I strongly recommend we have the hour, but you may want to explain what happened with the survey.
Sure. One of the items that Harry mentioned, and it was just glossed over because of the nature of the presentation, was something called the shift from procedural to conceptual. And the best example I can give you, we all went to school and we learned about multiplication of fractions. We learned the rule invert, then multiply. When you talk to most adults and say, why do you do that? They say, I have no idea. I just learned to do that. That's the procedure I learned. Conceptual is the math underneath the math, and it's really challenging, and it's harder for the teachers. The longer you teach, the harder it is to make that shift, because I'm so embedded, not on that side of the table, but everybody else. The longer you teach, the more you get into a groove, and it comes naturally and it's smooth, and suddenly somebody makes you take a 90-degree turn, and it becomes a challenge. So we've spent years now looking at all different kinds of ways of shaking this thing up. And the best shot that we could come up with was that had the least amount of instructional impact was a few times a month, release 1 hour, and then extend the day for the teaching, the certified staff to be able to have a continuous opportunity, recursive opportunity to do the kinds of training that we needed. And both Ann Rose and Kathy mentioned the idea of a major overhaul, and professional development is going to be critical. These are not the kind of things, you've heard a couple of the NEA Danbury members come. Mr. Haddad came one night and said, this is not all of you, this is those guys, and how do they expect us to do this, because it's daunting. And you've seen across the state and the country the challenges associated with the Common Core. So you generically just can't say to a teacher, there's a new curriculum, go teach it. They really have to be trained to make this conceptual shift. So we want to make sure we weren't flying blind. And as you know, we did a survey multiple times. We got back about 2,300 plus responses from parents, which in a typical survey time, what we looked at, they said expect between 8 and 10% return. So if we just surveyed kids and we had 10,000 kids, we should expect 1,000 responses. So to get this kind of response rate is really strong, much stronger than we normally get from the parent groups that have come out. So it's a pretty good indicator. Nothing is ever set in stone. It's just a pretty good indicator that two things came up. One is that they like the idea of, instead of going to a 2.5-hour day or a full day or any other option, if we only nip away at 1 hour a couple times a month, we can live with that. The second thing that, as we've been listening to folks, they really thought was important, and we listened to a lot of our teachers and principals as well, what are you hearing from your parents? Consistency. The more you can make it consistent, if it's I'm making this up, if it's every Monday morning, I know I can bank on it from 8 to 9 every Monday morning, I'm good, I'll figure that out. So our model, and you've seen it on the agenda, we went with Tuesdays because as we've talked to people, that seem to, Mondays are bad, Fridays are bad. We have different kinds of meetings already scheduled that are hard to change, and on and on and on. So we settled for Tuesdays, and we've tried to back into, if you look at that first, the 2015-2016 calendar, it was already approved January 14th, but it's revised on May 14th to include the PD days. You'll see 3 different colors. The ones that are most significant are those dates that are in yellow. And you'll see what we've tried to do. We had Sue Morris and a whole team of people working on this. We had NEA Danbury look at it, the Administrators Union look at it, the Instructional Development Team look at it. Lots of eyes on this, and we've tried. If you look at the month of October, you'll see October 6th and October 20th. If you look just below it, December 1st and 15th, most of the months have 2 Tuesdays carved out. We've tried to keep them as alternating Tuesdays. It's not a perfect science. There will never be a way in any given calendar that we have where we'll be able to have every other Tuesday all the way down. We also stayed away from September, and we stayed away from June because September's startup month, and everybody is kind of frantically getting the year running. And June, they're frantically running to close the year down. So we tried to be very cognizant of that. The blue days that you'll see, one in early October and one in mid-May, these are days that the teachers came forward, the administrators came forward and said, we really need a couple of days that we can spend on teacher evaluation. And for the folks who were on the TVAL committee, you know that was another major shift. So this, can we please have some time in addition to the work we do offline to be able to really focus on this on site? If we have questions, there are people there that can answer them. And then the other days, the red days, are full-day professional development days, and we've tried to be as mindful as possible. We've always had at least one in August, and that's before everybody comes back and we get ramped up for the year. We've always had one on Election Day because we're closed and we stay away from polling places. This time we put one in September, which is starting to get a parallel structure with the regional calendar that will be required. And then at the end of the year in May, we wanted to make sure we left a day there. So if something happened throughout the school year that we needed to really pull people together, we would have that opportunity. This is known as the bookends model. And so far the feedback has been this is the preferred option. If you move down to the next calendar, the 16-17, the draft in November, it was revised in May, again to put the professional development days in. We've backed in, if you look at the green dates, those are now the dates that are required by the regional calendar. And, not a whole lot of say in those dates. It was done at the regional level. There is some flexibility with the start and end times, end dates within a small margin. We also have the 2 red days in there. And so when you put the red and green together, that gives you the 4 traditional full days that we talked about. One in August, one in May, the bookends, and then the 2 that we backed into the regional calendar. The blue, again, one in the early part of the school year for teacher eval, one at the end of the school year for teacher eval. And again, you'll notice we've tried to keep alternating Tuesdays wherever possible. The only other thing I want to share is that you'll find in a couple dates, since we're on this calendar, the 16-17, if you notice in November there's only one Tuesday, and if you notice in February there's only one Tuesday, and that's because of the Thanksgiving holiday and also the President's Day weekend, and we've tried to capitalize on that wherever possible and not tear up the calendar too much. We recognize that we've lost an hour on either side. It's an hour on either side, so it's not the kind of thing that is really going to do
Bill, you want
much
to
damage.
speak to the October 10, 11, 12?
To go back to the legend, because I've looked at this so many times.
October 10th.
Yes. What we had here was we had October 10th was Columbus Day, which is closed, and October 12th was Yom Kippur, Jewish holiday, which in Danbury has traditionally been celebrated and closed. So, and then if you look at October 7th, which is a regional requirement, full-day PD, think about it from a parent and child's perspective, or even staff members' perspective. I'm off on Friday the 7th, I'm off on Monday the 10th, I'm off on Wednesday the 12th. What are the odds of having a full complement of kids coming in on the 11th? Would families capitalize on that and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days solid, contiguous break for my family? It's in October, it's still kind of vacation kind of weather. We just were kind of hedging our bets on that. We just thought it was a good idea, so we extended the calendar one day at the end.
Bill, no, what we did was, our conversation, we went to the day before Thanksgiving, instead of giving
Oh, I'm
them
sorry.
that day off.
Yes, thank you.
To keep the same day. You know, we've been traditionally giving families the time off day before Thanksgiving. That year, in this unusual circumstance, we recommend that the day before
Thank you, Sal.
the 23rd be a half day, therefore not extending the school year, because we're going a half day. So, that's
you're still losing another half day though. Because you're just gaining a half day.
That's right. You're losing another half day in this month.
Yes.
That's right. If you want to give the families off the 23rd for travel, then that half day becomes a full day somewhere else in the calendar. And that's one of the reasons why we did that, because we had such a low attendance rate, would be good.
Right.
So that's the conversation we thought the board should have, and we'd have to give some feedback.
And
But that's why you see the 23rd. If you remove the 23rd, then if you go to June and Bill, the last day becomes the 21st.
Right, originally we actually had that in mind. That's the extension I mentioned before. Sal's absolutely right. We thought it might be more desirable to keep sort of an end date around the usual time. But the board's preference, if you choose to have that day off, the best place to put it would just be to tag it on to the end of the school year. We still have our 5 snow days built in, so that it kind of hedges our bets on that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I just so the board, think about this, and it's, the way the year's been going. You can't go into July. You're not permitted to go into July. And so the more you encroach on the 21st or 22nd, I mean, you count the 5, you still have a few days left. But if we run into a crazy year with 8 or 9, you're all going to be with me when we say to parents, we go back to, as we said, we may go to our break on President's Day. That was one conversation we had. Or then we go to April break, just so we all know what we're talking about. I mean, it's only one day. It's not that it's a big deal. But, so we're open to feedback on that day before. It's a day we've been giving families, but we thought, be mindful of that. Because we're giving everybody the 3 days off in October, do you want to recoup it on the day before Thanksgiving?
If I could add just one other piece. If you compare the two calendars, where the exhibit number is at the bottom, on the first calendar, the 15-16, you'll see a little box of disclaimer information. This is a 185-day calendar, etc. If you go to the next calendar at the bottom, you'll see it's blank. We're going to put that back in. We just wanted to wait for the board to do its due diligence, and then we would slot that back in.
Bill, with what Harry was just discussing during the presentation to us, in the future, would that concept, if adopted, add additional days to this calendar?
To what Harry was suggesting? No. And it would, I'm sure, come out in the workshop. When the mathematics coaches came in and did their presentation, I guess it was earlier this year or last year, and they talked about coaching teachers, and they've spent a lot of time doing that. If you hold that idea here and you also look at the idea of when the CMT and CAP will go away, with 3-year period, that was the exact same approach that the math coaches used to phase in the elementary math new curriculum. So we would use that same model. It builds capacity, it's minimally disruptive. The only downside to it, it pulls coaches out more in terms of being in the buildings and more around writing curricula. In this case, we don't have to worry because it's the assessment, it's not the curriculum, and that's being done already.
Thank you.
We only have the 4 days, just so you know, and we've not negotiated any more than 4 full days. So the only days that we have are those Tuesdays. So there's a question over
Yes, Ann. So the early release days, the Tuesdays, I think there's 13 on this calendar for next year, if I'm counting correctly.
I'd have to count them up, Ann Rose.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I count 13.
That's
I have 13 also.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, 13.
Was there 13 on this current year?
I'm sorry?
There should be parallel structure, yes.
Was there
yes,
13
the
on
same as
current
this year. Yep.
Actually, all the days are the same. We went from 3, the only difference in Rose, we used to have 3 of the blues. We went to 2, those
T-val.
half-day teacher eval days.
Yeah.
So are there any other, I see that you have half-day, like, the December 23rd is crossed off as a half-day, and I'm looking at the 15-16 calendar. I'm not looking at the other one. And then I see November. Okay, so is that the only half-day, other than, I think the last day of school is half-day, right?
On the 15-16, they're off the full day before Thanksgiving, unless we made a mistake here.
No, you did, you're right.
Okay, so this year has been, right.
And that's been consistent, like with...
For the
what you've
last
done.
6 years we've been doing.
Yeah.
And you've always done, and then the last few days of school, on the 15-16 calendar. The last day would be the 16th? Is that the double-starred one?
That's what they added.
No, that's the last day for staff.
Okay, so the 15th.
And Rose, I apologize. I'm hearing impaired, so I'm having a hard time hearing you at
Oh,
all.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just looking, so the 15th is the last day of school, but that's a half day, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Last
So
day of
maybe we
school
should
for
put a
kids.
slash through that so that people who look at the calendar know that it's a half day of school. Like you have on the other half days, like on the 23rd, you have a slash through that, the 23rd of December. See how that's like, there's a diagonal line?
Sure, we have early dismissal, but we can certainly put a line
Only
through
because
that.
then if
Yeah.
parents might look at this and not realize
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's not a problem at all.
So the only thing that I heard, and your survey, it's confusing me because I only see 800 that answered. Maybe I'm looking at this wrong, but you said there was 20, how many people surveyed? Because when I add the two together, I get a different number.
When I checked downstairs with the team that did it, they came up with 2349. I can't attest to that, but they did the math with me and said we have 2349. And I guess the bigger issue for the board to deal with, if you want, clearly the preponderance of requests were to do the model that we've shared with you tonight. If the feeling is that we haven't surveyed deeply enough or often enough,
No.
I mean, we always could go back out.
No, I was just looking at it just says like question 1, question 2 in English, in Spanish, and Portuguese, so it went out in 3 different languages, right? Am I reading this correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I add up all those numbers, it's going to come up to
1,300 and change.
1,300 and change.
There's about 7,500 families, just
Okay.
usually when I ask.
Okay.
That's what, so,
All right.
just so you have an idea in your head about what we're talking about.
The only thing that I hear from my teacher friends in Danbury is sometimes the yellow early 1-hour release days, they love, I mean, obviously they would like to keep them, but where they're actually placed on the calendar, I'm trying to get to it and my computer's very slow here. I want to just give you an example. Like you're on okay, let me see, I'm here now. Okay, so you're on like a 4-day weekend, or you come off of an April break, and then Monday you go to school full day, and then Tuesday you have an early release day. Like I guess what they were trying to say, if it could be not in the same week of already a day that's either off of school or a half day that week, if the early release 1 hour could not be that same kind of week. So like you're looking at the 2016-17 calendar.
Mm-hmm.
On October 4th, you have an early release day, and then Friday is a full day off.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was hearing was, could you stagger that so that it doesn't seem to be the same week as other days off?
Short answer is yes. The longer answer is this. 2 things. One is, for the teacher's perspective, we gave it to NEA Danbury on purpose. To the rep council, they have reps in every building, and we said, please share this and get feedback from your folks. Same time, we did it with Citywide with Dr. Sal, with getting feedback from parents. We did the survey, we did the administrators, on and on and on. If you take out October 7th, full day PD, then you go back to our model every other Tuesday. The 7th in green there, because that's the regional requirement. So if we pull that out and we go, let's say the 4th, we move to the 25th.
Right.
One of the things we really wanted to try and do for instruction and for parents, and a lot of teachers were very firm with us on this, contiguous days, as many full weeks as possible, with a recognition that if we go to a model like this, because we have to have some time to train our teachers and our administrators, so the lightest touch we could get would be 1 hour, and for parents they said, please make sure you make it as systematic as possible, so it's every other Tuesday, and if it's not every other Tuesday, It's one Tuesday that month, and we just don't do the other Tuesday, and then publish this in advance and keep reminding us that it's here, keep it on the front homepage of your website, etc. So we have gone through, without reservation, 60 to 80 iterations of this. And what you're seeing tonight is what we've come back with, excuse me, Cottonwood, what we've come back with all the feedback that we've gotten.
Okay, so I hear that. I don't know. I just heard April break, and then you off a whole week, you come back on the Monday, and then you're off an hour on Tuesday.
Right, yep.
It's surprising.
April, Bill, Ann Rose brought up a good one. Look at April 16th.
I'm not saying get rid of it, I'm just saying.
I know, but in the same
Need a half
respect,
day 'cause it's
but in
my
the same
birthday.
respect, if you move it 2 weeks later,
Yeah.
then you're breaking the consistency of a full week. So it's,
Make it as easy as possible.
there's no win, there's no loss. To Dr. Glass's point, it's consistency. It's 2 Tuesdays a month.
That's right.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what, yeah, you want to make
Right.
it,
Yes.
you want to make it as easy as possible.
What, Bill, just
Yeah.
what we tried to do, if you look at April 15, 16, so we didn't confuse parents, we didn't take an extra day. The teachers are going to have the dismissal, they'll have the planned activity without the hour.
And that's
Because
exactly
of
my
the-
point.
Because of that, if you look here.
Yeah, in 1 month, in a particular month, because it would be too disruptive, then we just ignored it and said we're going to have to suck it up a little
No
bit.
dismissal, but the meeting will happen after
After.
the kids leave.
And what month is that?
If April, in April,
April.
right? I thought maybe, right.
April?
Look at 15, 16.
April 15, 16 calendar?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on the wrong
So
calendar. Hold on.
we're off the week of the 18th, 19th, 20th. If we didn't have off the 19th, that would be the day we
Right.
would have
I
had
hear
the
you.
early dismissal.
I hear you.
So we've tried to be mindful of that.
It's
but
the
that-
second
you
and
did get
third.
that
Okay.
feedback.
Kill it.
All right.
That's good. Thank you very much. Alrighty, is there anybody else have another question on the calendars? No? Seeing none, what are we going to next? What is next on my agenda? I've lost my way.
We have the information, sure, that's it.
Oh, the information, did everybody read about the Puerto Rico trip?
And the board chairman.
I'll give that in a minute. Okay, here she comes. We could start singing. Here she comes, Miss America.
Oh, come on, I have to talk every time. I'm Pat Stevens, I teach Spanish, Rogers Park. I'm here to ask you to consider our application for what will be our 9th trip to Puerto Rico, which is amazing for me to say that number because it seems like about 5 minutes ago that we asked to go for the first place. I think you all have the agenda from the past year that we did, and this year we took the opportunity, as we usually do, to add a couple of changes. We had the good fortune to meet a gentleman who in Puerto Rico who's a retired teacher who runs a sea turtle museum, and he also works and runs a volunteer program for the preservation of the nesting area, the maintenance and preservation of the nesting area, and also they have a constant force to work against the poaching of the eggs and the killing of the turtles themselves. So it's a very fascinating place, and we got to go down to the nesting area, and unfortunately we were off nesting season, which would have been really wonderful to see, but we got to kind of get an idea of what that was all about. This past year, we also visited a different school. We went to the School of San Juan this year. The school, Juana Rosario Cabrera, that we usually visit, was having some administrative changes at the time that we were going, and it really wasn't appropriate for us to be there at that time. So we made a new connection and a different school and had a wonderful visit there. Otherwise, we usually have our standards that we do. We spend a day in school. We hike in the rainforest, we kayak in the bioluminescent bay, we spend some time in an art museum, and we have a very well-rounded trip for the students. So hopefully, we have your blessing to do that again next year. Anybody have any questions?
And if there's openings, you'll ask one of us to go, right? Like me? Okay.
I know, I mean, every time you say, yeah. Yes?
Well, no, the chaperones pay.
How many students take advantage of this trip?
It really does vary every year. We've taken as many as 25, and as our smallest group happens to be 9. So it varies from year to year, and there's really no, predicting.
Ready, any other questions? Bill?
One quick point. There's a really nice piece that Pat mentioned. Rick Caselta is the teacher. He was a teacher at ACE for many years, and he was one of the founders of the Roots and Shoots program that we had with a collaborative with Western. It's still going strong. So the program that Pat's talking about, that's the program that the kids are getting a real. This is a perfect example of Harry's, from procedural to conceptual. They're right out in the field doing the kind of stuff we want them to do.
This trip has always been like that. I'm sorry. This Puerto Rico trip has been.
Yeah, we did have the good
amazing.
fortune to, for the past couple of years, we've gone down to visit Rick and Nellie at their farm. And we did plant a garden there several years ago, just after the Sandy Hook incident. We planted a memory garden in honor of the students and faculty that were involved in that. So each year we go down there, we clean it up and learn a little bit more about the planting there. And it was also through them that we met the gentleman with the sea turtles. So, you know, we're building a lot of connections down there, and it's really benefiting the students of Rogers Park Middle School to have those connections.
It just is. The whole total immersion part piece to me is fascinating. It's a lifetime experience.
That's the key. You know, we work very hard to keep it affordable, and yeah.
Well, yes. You want to discuss the other trip? Okay, there you go. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Pat. Thank you. Really, that's okay. All righty. Here's my report. Sum it up. First of all, I'd like to thank Michael. I'd like to thank Bob. I would like to thank Sal and Ralph, okay, for marching. I did not show up. I took sick, and I really did take sick, guys. It was like somebody hit me with a sledgehammer. But thank you very much. It was nice to have some representation. How did it go? How did the float?
Float? It went, it rolled. It was, I mean, for the first year of it,
understatement on things like this?
the art class made the facade, except they omitted Board of Ed on it. We have to get that on it, and we'll fix it up a little bit. But we had Billy hold it with the truck. We had the Board of Ed banner in front of the truck, so you could see. You were on a stand when you came across. You knew it was our float.
Did they win? Bill, did you vote for them?
Did you vote for us? Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Jeez.
And we excused you from marching because you were the judge.
We gotta know.
We had the banner. Oh, the banners aren't up. We had the banner for AIS on it. We had some kids from Shelter Rock carry their banner. I thought, and the band was there. And
Okay.
It was a good day. And
Thank
it wasn't
you.
too hot.
Okay, so now I'm going to harp on our next role as Board of Ed members, other than the tedious part. Graduation is the week between June 10th and June 17th. Here's how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different events. Actually, June 16th is a whole afternoon at Danbury High School. But other than that, the rest of them are come and go. Right, 12:30, 2:30, and 5 o'clock. That's all 3 middle schools going off on one day. The morning graduation at ACE leads off the week on Monday at 9:30. It goes from if you haven't been, it goes from 9:30 to about noon. And then of course there's the high school. But there's also, let's not forget the adult graduation on the 11th. All right, Bob Yoka, I know Bob will be there. Richard, you're usually there too, aren't you? At adult, okay. And anybody else that would like to attend, there's lots of room, guys. Okay? No? Okay.
How many will be attending the high school graduation? Show of hands.
Watch this. Everybody will come. Yes, see, everybody will come to the high school.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay. We have some ex-board members that'll be presenting too.
Oh, good.
They sent. All right, great.
Their kids are graduating?
They have some relatives in the board.
I think, isn't Irving one of them? Doesn't he have a son
No,
graduating?
His son is not graduating yet. Oh, is he a senior?
I think, yes, because they're looking at colleges.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Time flies.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
They did apply to, they did notice Debbie.
Okay. All righty. All right. That's all I have to say. Thank you and please. Thank you and please. All right. And that's it. Do I hear a motion to adjourn into executive session? Thank you.
Seconded.
So moved by Phyllis, seconded by Rich Hawley. Oh, all right. Okay, I was just asked for a 5-minute break. We have a 5-minute break, okay? Before executive session.